I'd like to introduce you to Henry Mortimer, and I'll let him introduce himself and tell you a little bit about his background.
Sure, thank you, Linda. I do. I just want to brag a little that when we did meet, it was a little bit like we had always known each other, and it was a little duet. But every company that we worked with either was a finalist or won in that pitch competition for 3 years running, right?
Right.
Whatever we were doing is working.
It works.
Because I do agree with you that I think Beta City, Betamore, these are startup companies every year sponsored by Betamore in downtown Baltimore. They're the tech startup community. Good question. So I am a word guy, that's what I say. As long as I can remember, I've been interested in playing with words, writing. And for a while I thought I would be, I've always wanted to be a published author. So I've written some poetry and gotten it published in short stories. And that's what's going to be my career path, I thought. But once I got through 12 plus years of school, from kindergarten through, I realized I didn't want to go back and get an MFA, and tried to figure out what I could do with my life. So I wound up in publishing for a while, and followed some doors that opened in communications. But in the late 90s and early aughts, as we all remember, there were a lot of layoffs. And for me, after 3 layoffs in less than 10 years, I had to kind of reconfigure what I was doing. So I cobbled together my skills as a writer and a creative person, and I had sort of risen in the ranks at a few publishing companies. So I had some business development skills and marketing skills, and I created my own company, 2008, Mortimer Communications, which, believe it or not, took me a while to come to that. I had lots of fancy names for my business, and finally somebody looked at me and said, you're just selling yourself. You should put your name on it. So that's how I did that, or why I did that. I hung out a shingle and went out looking for clients. And I did pretty well for a couple years, calling myself a marketing expert. But what I quickly found out was it wasn't very specific. Or I'd say I was a writer. Well, so you work for the newspaper? No, I used to do that. Do you write books? No, I don't. So it took me a while to get a sense of what is my story. How do I talk about myself? And I actually finally again had some smart advisor say to me, call yourself a storyteller. That's what you're doing. And it actually is a buzzword in marketing. You've probably heard lots of people use this term, but it really suits me. It's my ability, it calls on my ability to play with words, to understand the power of words and how they can help. And I use that skill to help my clients better articulate who they are, what they do, and really why they matter. And to me, that's the story. So I help companies clarify their messaging so that the story they tell resonates with the people they're trying to reach. So that's my story.
Right, and you spoke in the past about the message needs to be, I think, clear, concise.
The 3 C's: clear, concise, and compelling. That's what I strive for in the work I do.
And isn't that our challenge? So many people say, I just don't. I spoke with somebody at a meeting last week, and she said, I'm a business coach, but I'm not really a business coach, and I do work with children, but I also work with adults. And she said, I can't figure out how to tell my story. And she didn't come today, but I told her to come. But that's a challenge for all of us, because we don't just have that one background. Before we go on, you're saying, why did she give me blue and green cards, right? What I'd like you to do, if you think of a question, certainly you can shout it out, but there are other questions, or if you think, boy, what is this about branding? Or here are some grammatical things I'm a little concerned about. Not everybody likes to take ownership of those challenges. Write any of them down. If it's a question about writing, grammar, anything related to writing skills, make that a blue. Just write it on the blue card. And I'm going to be looking at those cards and answering them. So if you have questions, you can just pass them up as they come up. You don't have to get up and put it on the wall. I'll take care of that.
I was trying to practice my soft skills while you were talking before and not blurt out and be rude, which is what we talked about. But for me, the difference between hard skills and soft skills is hard skills is what's on your resume. Everything else is the soft skills. What you learned in kindergarten, what your grandmother taught you. Those are the important people skills, as you mentioned. It's top of mind for me right now because I have 2 children, one out of college, one in college, and I'm helping them write their resume. So how do you tell the story of a 20-year-old man, boy,
Some days.
who has had great experience over the last couple summers as a camp counselor and a lacrosse coach. How do you find the words on a resume, which now he has to put together, right? So the resume, those hard skills that will resonate with somebody. How do you word? He actually has. I have a niece with Down syndrome. He was a personal daycare provider. Again, I'm struggling for those words, but that's what we spent the last 2 days doing, this is really top of mind for me. So how do you put so what do I do? So how do you put the words on that resume that's going to make people outside of that realm of that circle of friends or understanding say, okay, well, I can see that he has organizational skills. He's been responsible. He's independent. He takes assignments. So what I say is that those are the hard skills, and that's the hard part, is finding the right words. And then the cover letter. That's where you now turn over and sell the soft skills. So I wanted to share that because I think, and professionally, that's really at the core in terms of communications and a lot of what we're going to talk about today.
And doesn't it come up with a lot of women who were staying at home for many years and then they want to re-enter the workplace? How do they look? What's their story? It's not just I stayed home and watched my children, but what are the skills that you developed because you did that? So it's all how to finesse that. So what you're saying for college or the college essays isn't that different from the job interviews. And in a networking event, how do you explain what you do? And so storytelling isn't just the storytelling that you give in a speech. We'll talk a little bit about that, but it's a storytelling on just how do you brand yourself or how do you tell what your story is? Because I've heard Henry transform pitches for these pitch competitions into, here's the product, this is the product. Well, but what does it mean to the audience? How do you tell the story so they want to listen? And so some of it is the public speaking piece that I do a lot of, but the other part is, well, understanding how you tell that, how you weave that story into the pitch.
So I help them craft that message, and you help them deliver it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's a great way.
And again, this for me, what's your story is, as I said, why you matter. Why are we having this conversation? What are you going to do for me? But at the core, it's the ability to balance the features, right? So the resume is just the features. I've done this. I've done fastest, smartest, Harvard, whatever that is. But then the benefits. So I always say storytelling is the combination of the head and the heart, right? We need to know those intellectual facts because that's how you fit into the puzzle. Yes, you have those hard skills that we're looking for. Then the benefit, the heart side is, okay, so how is this going to help me? How are you? How is being a camp counselor and a daycare provider for a kid with special needs going to help us with our, run our internship program or whatever the case may be? So being able to say, okay, here's the fact, but here's how it's going to work. Here's how it's going to impact you. That's storytelling to me, storycraft in its essence. Brand, you mentioned brand. I hate the word brand, but again, it's a buzzword. And as a word person, I say that because if you know the origin of the term brand, it's a really harsh way of thinking that I'm going to, if I'm Under Armour, I'm going to sear into your brain or onto your chest my logo, right? So branding was when the cowboys all got together and the ranch owners said, okay, this is, MC, Mortimer Communications, that's my cow, and successfully speaking, SS, that's her. So we branded those cows so that everybody knew whose cows belonged to whom. But what the story, so I always say branding is for cows, storytelling is for people. And just in terms of marketing, to be glib, because the storytelling is what the cowboys and the ranch hands did when they sat around the campfire, right, at the end of the day, and they all identified with each other. Oh yeah, I really believe in what you do. Your values and mine link up, so I'm going to go work for your ranch or your ranch. So that's what I don't know how I got onto that, but
you did a great thing, and you don't even realize what you just did. When we tell when we're giving speeches and we tell stories, we remember it better. And that's going to my next question, like, why is it important? You're going to remember branding now because Henry spoke about cowboys. Like,
You're
who would
doing
have
my
thought?
job
And
for
you
This
didn't
is
even
what we
realize you
did
did that,
at
right?
At the pitch practice.
Right, so
Yeah.
you don't even realize you did that,
Yeah.
because now if I link a story
Yeah.
with my message, you remember it. So now, every time I think of branding, and I never thought of this before, yes, it's the branding. Gave you a physical, a
That's-
visual,
yeah.
and a story,
Right.
and it's going to stay in my mind. And now I will never forget why branding is really not the term you should use.
Yeah, so again-
was brilliant, brilliant.
Again, think of it. Amy, you and I were talking a little bit before. Again, as a parent, our job, like a pinball machine, is to launch these kids out into the world. And you want them to want to be hit with the paddle and go off into the world, just like you don't want someone to think, "I've been branded." You want your customers to want to be a part of your circle, your tribe, another buzzword. And that's thank you. That's really what I was getting at, is storytelling allows us to invite the customer in to be a part of your brand, not you blindly accept that I'm always going to buy Nike. I don't even know why. My dad, I tell the story of I was a Norelco razor guy forever. I don't use a whole lot of razors anymore, as you can see. I may be a Grecian formula user soon, but I got a Norelco razor from my dad several times growing up. Great Christmas present. Dads don't do that. I think I'm 13 and I got an electric Norelco razor. And you get sort of, and the guys here will know, but maybe women, you can relate to it too, but at some point the razor wears out, right? It gets dull. And I remember going to the store and looking at the new Norelco and thinking, okay, I got to buy it. But buying the replacement blades was almost as much as buying a new piece. And I didn't know there were half a dozen or more varieties to pick from. And I didn't know which one to go, but I was a Norelco guy. And so I bought another one, spent way too much money, and not really happy with my decision. A friend of mine, as a business partner and a friend, gave me a subscription to Harry's. I don't know whether you know who Harry's is. You're all nodding, right? And it was a transformational moment. It arrived in the mail unexpectedly, so Scott didn't tell me. But and again, what a silly gift in a way. But it comes in this brown corrugated box about this big, very plain. And I opened it, and I actually had the same experience when if you are iPhone owners, the first time probably you bought the iPhone and it came in that beautiful white box. And Steve Jobs did that on purpose, because when you open that box, there was a sucking sound. He engineered that thing to do that on purpose, so that you were like, right? So I had that same, and truly, that was part of his evil plan. And the iPhones, my mind was like, I wanted to lick it. It was just so appealing. Same experience with Harry's. This little cardboard box arrives. I open it. Inside is a razor blade, or a handle with a blade on it, 3 separate blades, and then this little box with a woolly mammoth on it. I mean, that was it. And what I also noticed was that the Norelco ads that you would see, it says it's like the X917, 30% cuts hair 30% closer to the skin, has 17 rotating blades, multi-directional, all this stuff, right? All the facts. Harry's had none of that. Actually, so does anybody know what shaving 30% closer to the skin means? Could you tell the difference between 31 and 29%, right?
My sophomore?
I mean, and the XG7, totally meaningless to me. The fact that it had multi-angle blades, I mean, all that stuff, it's almost a given, right? You want to have a close shave, and you want it to be, so, what I came away from that experience thinking, most marketing people are liars, right? This is BS, what they're selling me. 30% closer, like I'm supposed to think, wow, I got to have this. It's 30% closer than it used to be. Thank God. I mean, look, I know I have some here, but I don't have a whole lot. I mean, I didn't need 30% closer. But Harry's didn't do any of that. Harry's just said, look, we're here to provide you with a clean shave, comfort, and at an affordable price. Like, I'm sold. Those are the benefits that I was looking for. I didn't care so much about the facts. In fact, as I said, a good shave was a given to me. Why would I buy a razor blade that wasn't going to do its job? So the even minor storytelling in the whole thing to me, the whole package was the story of Harry's. So I say storytelling can be visual too. That sucked me in. I got immediately what their values were, and they matched up with mine. And I'll be a lifelong Harry's customer now because I know why. I wanted this product, and sorry for Norelco. I'm sure they can afford for me to go.
Right.
But that's the difference between. That's why I say storytelling is so effective as a marketing tool.
Now, if you watch the video, and we haven't published yet the video that I did with Henry a few weeks ago, well, he told me something. I love all of his stories, obviously. We talked about how you would even talk to your children about strangers.
Oh.
I love that metaphor.
Well,
that story.
Yeah. So again, what is storytelling? Why do I talk about storytelling? For one thing, the human brain naturally thinks in stories. As I said, we're faced with a lot of facts all the time, and in order to communicate, we have to weave them into some kind of narrative. I mean, if you went home or back to your office and somebody said, "Well, where were you this morning?" Hotel, guy talked, coffee. Right? That's not what you would say. You would weave something out of that, right? You would take those facts. So storytelling is a natural human function. It's also the oldest trick in the book, right? Civilization's been using stories to communicate information since the dawn of time, recorded history. The Bible, the Odyssey, Fun with Dick and Jane, whatever, the Grimm's fairy tales, because again, it's effective. So what Linda's referring to is with children, you can say to them, don't take candy from a stranger. Bad things will happen to you. All right, so the facts, candy, stranger, bad things, or don't go into the woods. Something could happen to you. Most kids, it's, yeah, sure. In one ear, out the other. But if I said to them, you ever heard the story of Hansel and Gretel? Two innocent children go off into the woods. Their parents told them not to, but they went anyway, and they ran into this nice, kind old lady who offered them candy. And then she brought them into her house, and the house was actually edible, and they got to eat food. And then, as they got full and sleepy, she put them in the oven, she cooked them, and she ate them. Don't take candy from strangers. Right? You see the difference? Won't they remember that story? So that's what I say. So we as a civilization have learned since time immemorial that we humans need more than just the facts in order for us to take in the information, remember it, and then again, my goal, I hope, is when you leave here, you go back and tell somebody about that storytelling guy and share some of this. So it allows us to carry those messages, carry them forward. The third reason I say it is, and then we talked about this, it's in the video, is that science backs what I'm talking about. There was a study done in Princeton a couple years ago where the researchers used a PowerPoint presentation, right, basically just words and pictures on the screen, and then they used an MRI to measure how the information was being taken in. And what they found was with the PowerPoint presentation, the language processing parts of the brain, the Wernicke center and whatever, Brocae, again, these are facts I don't remember, but I remember the story. They lit up like a Christmas tree on the MRI. Then the researchers brought somebody in to accompany the PowerPoint who conveyed that same information in a storytelling manner. And what they discovered was not only did the language processing part of the brains light up, but the parts of the brain related to something to do with the story. So if I was talking to you about rock climbing, your brain automatically starts to think about how maybe you would move the muscles. So more of the brain basically lit up on the MRI. So the scientist's conclusion is that storytelling uses the whole brain. So you're more engaged when you hear a story than when you just get some facts. So you definitely can process the words and the pictures, but what you really need is more context to make that story resonate.
And just this week, I don't know if anybody went to PSA, the partnership program, and I heard Chalmers Brothers, I always get his name backwards. Chalmers Brothers, I don't know if you know, he's a business coach, told so many stories. But they're not irrelevant stories. They're not just what happened this weekend with my family. They weaved into the information that he was trying to teach. And so you walk away remembering the stories, but by doing that, you're remembering the information he wanted to relay. So we can talk on and on about this, but we also want to talk about other areas. These are some quotes that Henry had given me. We just passed the one. I'll go back for a minute. The storytelling is the most powerful way to put ideas in the world.
I'm not making this stuff up. Robert McKee, one of the foremost screenwriters and, more importantly, screenwriting coaches in Hollywood working today. I think he's got 60 Academy Awards to his credit with his clients as well. So Hollywood writers, television writers use storytelling all the time, right? Every time you turn on the TV, even the news these days uses these techniques that I'm talking about. Seth Godin, leading thinker in terms of marketing and leadership, also a huge proponent about the fact that, as I said, marketing is not fact-based. It shouldn't be. Good, effective marketing can no longer be fact-based. You can't get the Norelco razor response in the mass to the masses that you used to be able to. You don't just sell cars because they have great fins on the back.
It's the experience.
It's the experience. We need to share those stories and make sure that we connect on that personal level as well. And then, as I said, time in memoriam. Even the Native Americans believe that facts are great, but if you tell me a story, Hansel and Gretel, I'll think about it and share it for forever.
And how many people will be telling that story to their children and grandchildren, right?
God, these days there are too many stories to tell.
So,
see the advertising on television starting to do that with the gum, with the little drawings
Yes.
on the thing.
I
Perfect.
use that in. Oh yeah, I use that in the. Yep.
through time, right, how it went through time.
Yeah, and again, you watch that commercial. I use this in a workshop I teach. Do you know what we're talking about? Extra gum. And it took me a couple of viewings to recognize at the end their tagline: "Give extra, get extra." Mm-hmm. That's their tagline. They're selling chewing gum, and even their tagline says, "Let's have a connection." And this commercial, where it's a boy meets girl. If you've seen the full, it's about 3 minutes long. You can see it on YouTube. Most of the TV commercials now chop it up into little segments. But the boy draws. There's no narrative. There's no voiceover or anything. There's the cute boy and girl meet, say, in high school, college. They bump into each other. They pick up the books. I think there's a gum exchange. I don't even remember.
He keeps giving her the wrappers and drawing on the
but where
wrappers.
did when did the gum exchange originate? But yeah, so he'll sketch a little drawing on the gum wrapper, and then, spoiler alert, at the end, they break up over the course of the video, and again, no narration. You're sucked in watching these two. Are they going to get back together? Right? That's the storytelling of it all. And at the very end, she comes to this out in the hallway where he's put the gum wrappers on the wall. So he's saved them all. They get back together. They fall in love. The ring comes out. It's a chewing gum commercial, but extra. Yeah,
But that's
Google
interesting,
that.
if you don't
You
remember
go
the name
home
of the...
Another thing, you should Google the extra chewing gum ad to see what I'm talking about. It sucks you in because of the storytelling fundamentals in that particular capacity.
And that's my next question. What are the fundamentals of telling a story?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, we could spend hours talking about this, and there are techniques. So just having a traditional narrative. Again, back to ninth grade English, right? There's the beginning, there's the rising denouement, the rising action, the denouement, and the conclusion. That narrative arc, that's classic. Having a hero in your story, those are the techniques that are in the background of that 3-minute video that get you from the beginning to the end. Guy sitting in the room, bullet flies through, Jason Bourne, how's he going to get out of this situation? All of a sudden his life is transformed, right? The hero. How does he get back to that state he was in before the bullet came into the... Those are fundamentals for crafting story. But again, what from my perspective is certainly in terms of marketing is, and it's funny with that ad too, because I sometimes wonder, what are they really getting at? But what it is that they are sharing their values. They want other people to be together. That chewing gum literally is the bond between other people. That's what they believe in. And now you can kind of shake your head and think, it's gum. But it sells, we remember it. And Wrigley's, You know, a lot of what I see out there is this is another thing I think about and talk about a lot. A lot of the advertisements out there are that the product or company is the hero. You know, we are the most powerful, we can change things. Like Wrigley, we're the best. We're made from the finest products. But what Extra, I think, does is get beneath that and makes the consumer, makes the customer the hero of the story. So my advice always is don't make your product or your company the hero. Make your customer the hero of the story. Again, classic storytelling technique. You have the hero and you have the mentor and guide. So Luke Skywalker, right? He's perfectly fine. All of a sudden his family gets killed. His world is turned upside down. He meets Yoda. Well, at first he meets Jedi, Obi-Wan Kenobi, thank you. And then later Yoda. So he has two guides who give him a process, who give him some kind of training that helps transform him into someone bigger than himself. He overcomes his challenges. He's the hero. So I always say, let's be Yoda to make your customer Luke Skywalker. This goes back to that fundamental, why are we talking, what's in it for me, goal, how do you answer that? That's how you bring your customers in. You allow them to participate in the story of your business, and you show them that you're going to go from, Serve Pro, I got a flood, I'm in a horrible state. So Serve Pro comes in and, wow, thank you, Serve Pro, now my life is better. That's another technique that I think is very effective.
A lot of what you're saying, because of course I come from the communication speech background, and so much of this relates to giving a speech, right? Know your audience. Talk about the value to the audience. It's not about me as the speaker. It's about, can I provide for you what you need, and can I solve your problems? Doesn't matter what I think your problems are. I need to listen to find out what yours are. The other thing is with public speaking, they often talk about tell stories, and I mentioned that already. One of the questions here is, when do you tell the story? Do you start with the story? Do you weave it throughout? What are your thoughts about that, Henry?
As a word guy, I'll say things like, it depends.
Sure.
And it does. So some of what you do in marketing is subjective. I can't give you a rule book here. So when do you engage in I say always. Mm-hmm. Again, think about your marketing in the same capacity as a networking function. When you all arrived here, if you didn't know each other, I would be willing to bet there was some story. Amy, you and I leaped into it almost immediately. So create a story, and it can be the history of the company story, which is fine, or it can be something that acts in a more transformative nature, or it can just be something that's interesting and engaging to your audience. How do we find each other? For me, the fundamental, as a word guy, I've always been impressed by the numbers guys. Smart people like Einstein can write these incredible formulas that tell us how the universe works, and he boils it down to E equals MC squared. Chalkboards full of numbers and formulas, and he can boil it down to 3 letters. I've always thought, wouldn't it be cool as a writer to be able to do that? So I did. And for me, the fundamentals of storytelling are that you you want to make sure that your values, right? So the facts and the features together, why you matter, right? Why you started this company, or why the company was started, and why we should have that conversation. The values plus experience or emotion. So go back to the give or the Extra commercial. Right? There's that head and the heart working. So values plus emotion equals action. What do you want your prospect, your customer, the person you're telling the story to, what do you want them to do? So my formula, V plus E equals A. Not as powerful as E equals MC squared, but that's I've been able to boil that down. So if you, to go back to your initial question, if you can use that formula, you'll know when to use it. Mm-hmm. Because if you know your audience and you know the answer to the what's in it for me question that they're asking, why are we having this conversation? know that answer when you go into the market. And that takes research and customer discovery and all kinds of marketing buzz terms. But if you know the answer, know who you're talking to, and use that formula, you'll have a better engagement, and I do think you'll know when. It sounds like I completely dodged that. I'm not a politician.
No, that's exactly. But what's interesting, and I always come back to the communication piece. So we go to a networking event, and we ask somebody something about what they do, and they start talking, and they tell a story, and they keep telling, and I have no interest in their industry, right? And they keep going and going and going, and so as the storyteller, you still have to be the observer and make sure that that person still wants to listen. So you need to say, okay, I'm telling Carol something about it, and she's like, I see she's maybe glazing over because I think what I do is so important, and I just keep talking about it and talking about it, and I think these experiences are wonderful, and if I'm not picking up that Carol may be looking to maybe meet somebody else in the room, my story isn't worth anything. In fact, it sabotaged me because it's like, boy, Linda doesn't stop talking, right? That doesn't work. So the same storytelling has to go into networking events, like know your audience, know that maybe your industry does. I mean, Carol, our industry resonates completely, and that's another story we'll talk about later. But there's some industries where maybe there's no connection, or we have to find the connection to tell the story, but the story doesn't have to be 10 minutes long.
Well,
it has to be the E equals MC squared.
That's another fundamental or technique of storytelling is brevity or length. Again, word guy stuff. We have poetry, we have haiku poetry, we have lyric poetry, we have epic poetry, we have short stories, novels. I mean, you all read books, right? I assume. How long was the last book you read? 200 pages, 300 pages? Who's read a 1,200 or 1,500 word novel before? Yeah, right. Maybe occasionally, right? But there are books out there. I always thought the Harry Potter books were incredible because I'm watching my 12-year-old kid read a 500, 800, 900, and I always thought she needs an editor, right? But for whatever reason, they're engaged in it, and they went all the way through it. My daughter's read every one of those books multiple times. So the length of that book didn't really matter. But on your website, you don't want to start with a 5,000-word story, right? So there's a time and a place for everything. Again, haiku poetry, the classic frog jumps in, splash, right? Frog leaps, lily pads, whatever the translation might be. That's a story. There's very, very, very few words, right? Very economical, and you get a picture for it. And then you think about any lyric poem that you've ever read, and there's a time and a place for that. So knowing your audience, so this is good because you're cutting me off because I'm telling a long story. Knowing your
and you're
audience,
picking up body language.
But again, think about a Hollywood movie, right? So one of the things to think about for how do you make a story shorter? How do you make a story shorter? That's another side. I've been talking too much. Is being selective in what you're delivering. So you want to tell your customers everything, right? But you know that's like, if you're thirsty, don't go to a fire hose. You go to a water fountain, or you get a nice, cool glass of water. So being selective in the information that you're sharing to get engagement.
And who likes the books that have in this day and age, those 3 to 5 page chapters that you just get the idea and then you move on?
Yeah.
And so in this day and age, we also have to focus on people's attention, and the attention is short, and that's why YouTube videos are so good. Or that's why when I do a video, Larry has said to me, no, you can't do a 5-minute video. Nobody's going to watch after the second minute.
Well, they might if it's engaging, though, and
might,
you're providing them with what they're looking for.
But if you can tell it to them very quickly, just think how powerful that is. We can go on and on about stories, but I want to also talk about the writing skills, because and some of that is related to what you do with telling a story. Before I do that, does anybody have questions about, not branding, but telling your story?
Brand storytelling,
Right.
How's that? That's
But
the compromise.
let's take brand out, right? Because I don't want to think of branding. But does anybody have any questions that Henry didn't cover? Any burning
Do
questions
you all
about
feel
branding?
like the story you tell to your customers, more likely your prospects, is working? Do you get head nodding or head scratching? How long does it take? How long does it take for somebody who's completely naive to get what you do? That's in, so people ask me sometimes, again, this is the word guy, I can say, I don't really know, hard to tell. How do you measure whether storytelling is effective? And that to me is a critical one. If we're having a conversation and you keep looking at me like, I know what you're saying, it's my son wears a t-shirt that says, your lips are moving but all I hear is blah, 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 blah. If that's how you're marketing, if that's what you're doing with your marketing, then you're confusing and losing your customers. So making sure that you get head nodding, and if they get the head nod in 3 words or 1 sentence, you're doing a really good job. Mostly because they're going to want to hear more. The 3 to 5 chapters thing is, that's critical. 3 to 5 page chapters, but or the short YouTube versus the long one. If the short one gets them to click, then you're getting engagement. That's really what you want to do. Is you want to make sure that you're getting your audience from the get-go to think, I want to have a longer conversation.
And the same goes with public speaking. If you're giving a speech, even if it's 6 hours or 1 minute, you need to be able to put in 1 sentence what your objective is. And if you can't do that, then you don't know what your objective is, and you're not going to be on point when you speak. So there are so many parallels between public speaking and writing skills.
Yeah.
And storytelling. But my mind was jumping ahead.
Sure.
Writing skills. So there's so much to think about with writing skills. Do you have best practices in general?
Clear,
Because they're
concise,
falling
and
apart.
compelling.
Right,
Yeah.
because writing skills have deteriorated dramatically in each generation because of the text messaging or the emails.
Yeah, again, I'll tell you a story. When email came out, as a word guy, as a writer, I thought, gosh, email, this is great. People are going to write better. It's going to be wow, there's always some debate over whether it was Mark Twain or Henry Adams or that classic letter to the sun. I didn't have time to write a short letter, I thought, wow, people are going to get back to letter writing. It's going to be great. Who thinks email is an effective and communication tool that's made life better? Anybody?
In some situations.
It depends.
Right.
So best practices in the workplace, even for email, is, well, if you can, what I've learned over the years, and I, again, as a writer, I can't believe I'm saying this, they're going to come take my card from me, but, if you can make a phone call, if it's quick enough for a phone call, don't send an email. Because what you end up sending in that email is a couple of words, no punctuation, maybe not even any capitalization, and just like I said in storytelling, you don't want just the facts, ma'am. There is no way you can read emotion, context, or anything in an email or a text. It's even worse. So best practices to me, one would be, if you're going to write something to me, take the time and make sure that there is at least a modicum of grammar and that you've put an effort into making sure that what you're sending to me is clear and concise and compelling. I want you to respond.
Because that's your professional image and people are judging you. Here's a situation. This is an email, it's changed a little bit with names, that I received. I put together a new logo and I put a lot of effort into it. And I was very nervous, like, is it good? Because we were not spending thousands of dollars with this, but we wanted a logo. And I sent it to the marketing person. And I said, I completed my new logo this weekend. What do you think of it? And the response was, very nice. Talk to you soon. And I thought, she doesn't like it.
She did put an exclamation point.
I did, and I forgot that when I got back to her. But it was like, oh, that reminds me when my mother used to say to me, it's really interesting. She can't stand what it looks like, but she's not going to tell me. And so I went back to this person when I saw in person, and I said, about the logo, she said, oh, I thought it was great. I said, well, you told me it was very nice. I said, and she's taken a lot of my workshops, and she said, oh, you're right. There was no visual other than the written word, and there was no vocal. I couldn't hear a tone of voice. And when I look back, there was an exclamation point, but I couldn't see it.
But you told me this the other day, and you didn't think there was any punctuation.
That's
so
right. That's how I remembered it.
The takeaway would be that exclamation point got lost because what you interpreted was very nice. You met the minimum requirements.
Right. And she said to me,
that wasn't her intention, right?
Right, and she said to me, that's amazing because I never think when I get back to my clients, she's so many clients and she's getting back and she thought it was very nice. Yeah. But if I heard her tone of voice, if it were a phone call, I would have responded differently. But I was like, oh my goodness, I have to give her feedback on this because I was so demoralized.
That's how I use email. Email is just a quick I acknowledge. I do a quick acknowledgement, and then some people say, you're very short. And I'm like, well, I just want to let you know that I got it. That way I'm responding to it,
There's
and I'm not
that
forgetting about you, because if it sits for hours and people don't see your response, then I get mad about that.
Right,
So
but there's that
something-
challenge.
It's,
that
it's
balance.
ineffective in that capacity.
Right.
Not to criticize you, but because I think if this person was somebody you had some familiarity with and you were really upset, you probably would have picked up the phone and said, well, wait a minute, we really worked on this. What's going on? And she would have said, no, I really liked it.
Right,
So
but
in
if
the-
you're
you know-
insecure and not sure yourself, or you just need that praise, which we all do, you go down this rabbit hole and say, oh my goodness, I really, she doesn't like it at all, where do we go now?
Right.
And the one on the right, I don't think that's so bad with a head.
Very cool.
It's Lisa.
And what's it?
Lisa?
Names change to protect.
What? Oh, no, yeah,
Oh,
that's, at least is me, I guess. But anyway, the point is, I didn't get enough feedback, and maybe your audience is needy, right? Maybe they need that feedback, or else they're going to interpret
putting
it completely
in
differently.
the effort to craft an effective communication. So if you were going to say what you would say to somebody, if you can put it in writing, and again, I'm not suggesting you write like you're writing a novel. God knows that I spend way too much time agonizing over words, but because I understand how they might be misinterpreted. But just keeping in mind the idea that if I, so a sentence, my opening sentence in my novel, it was night and it was raining, versus it was a dark and stormy night, right? You get the difference there, and you don't have to have purple prose in your emails, but putting a little bit more effort to make sure that the communication is clear. And if you want to be brief, it's great. Call me and I can tell you more. Because I get it. I get 100 unread emails a day. And, we're at the other end now where this great communication tool has become a burden. It's no longer. Yeah.
Lynn?
I guess in emails, I always look at an email and answer an email as if the person was right in front of me. And so I would never say I love it, because if I was in front of that person, that might be misinterpreted. I would have phrased it differently.
So you're taking the
Kind of
time
result.
to make sure that your communications are as
Yes.
effective as they can be
But it
within their
doesn't
limitations.
take that much longer. It's only an extra sentence. I would always probably say, hey, that looks great, I think go with it, and then you would have changed that entire thing. And
Sure.
it would have taken me 10 more seconds to write that. And I think that's the disadvantage in email, because people think, oh, it's a quick way to tell somebody something, but it is. But you gotta put a little bit more oomph into
Right,
it.
and that's when it's a positive message. What if it's a negative message? Because then you don't want to respond so quickly. You need to let it sit and go back to it, because your feeling may change an hour later. So email could be so dangerous.
And another, again, back to just best practices, we're only talking about email, but even in written communications in the business world, and maybe outside of, we also, well, I don't know, but there was a time when some of us wrote memos, right? You wrote something, you printed it out, and you spent a heck of a lot more time on that memo than you did on an email that looked like that before. So it's still best practices from before, mismanners, all that stuff, it really still matters.
And speaking of mismanners, Carol, you had a question, right?
I was just gonna make one other comment. I think that a lot of people, it's based on the emails I get, forget that sending an email that has your signature tagline on it is a little bit of advertising for you. If you've got your logo, you've
Sure.
got contact, you've got maybe a link to the company, and I may, it's right there in front of me, I'll link, I'll go and see. what
You're in
this
marketing,
company
aren't
is
you?
about. No, I'm not.
Oh.
Well, I own my own company, so I guess I am.
Yes, well, you're in sales, marketing, HR.
Everything.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
But it drives me crazy when I get an email from somebody from a company and it's just got their name.
Right.
Particularly if I need to send them something, I've gotta go online. I've
Or
gotta
look
look it
down
up.
the
Again,
whole
in
thread.
terms of effective communications, what drives me crazy is when people don't put their phone number.
Yeah.
They'll email you back and say, call me. How the hell do I do that? Use the tools that you're given, so the signature block is created for a purpose. But your logo, your tagline, your phone number, why people send out emails from their iPhone, which I get, and I hope we're all past the please excuse the typos, signature block. But why they put their email in their email drives, and not their phone number, I don't understand. So
And
best practice.
again, there's so many questions, but even signing an email with your initial, what do you think about that?
I do it all the time.
Do you?
But only when I know that this person and I have been in communication before. Otherwise, again, go back to the formal letter writing that your grandmother probably encouraged you to do in college. Write your mother, dear so-and-so, love, thanks, best wishes, all that stuff. It just it somewhat depends on knowing who your audience is.
Right, and I guess it also depends on, like, if I sign my name L, would it be that much harder to put 4 more letters? Even if I just put Linda.
Sure.
So there's that degree of familiarity, but you have to decide how appropriate it is with that particular audience.
Well, and no offense, but your Linda isn't a normal Linda. So if you wrote L and I knew you were Linda and I didn't see your name, I may respond back spelling it with an I, which, man, for some people, that's it's a real slap in the face. That says, I don't either care enough to
It's not paying
know
attention,
what
right.
your name is, I didn't pay attention, or, whatever. I may not be that right soft skills person for whatever this, the capacity.
Typically, both ways, my name is Phil, but it could be spelled with 2 L's.
Yeah.
And my name is in the bottom, in my signature, has my name, my full name, it says Philip, right? And people will respond back to me and spell my name wrong. And I actually, every time it happens, I'm like, they're asking me something like, you don't pay enough attention to see how to spell my name. Why would I want to have you do something else that requires your attention if you just showed me you don't?
Phil, that's a great point, because our writing style and our writing skills and our grammar, and I want to move into these other areas, reflect who we are. And so somebody may not do business
It's
with
your
us because we don't
personal-
pay attention to
It's your
details.
personal brand story. I mean,
Right.
it really is. And I know this is silly stuff in a way, but it's really fundamental.
And what about the emoticons? Now, wait a minute, but if I got a happy face with that very nice, I might have responded differently.
I know, it's
right?
funny. You asked me this before, and I think I surprised you with my response. I think these are great because they're a shortcut to your point about being quick on time, but it creates a little more emotional context. So nice with a smiley face is better than nice with no punctuation.
But doesn't it depend?
Yeah, the audience.
Well, again, the
To a CEO.
You met before.
the appropriateness, but if your personal brand is lots of emoticons, that's the other person's decision then to take in those facts and decide whether I want to associate with you.
A
So,
simple smiley face is one thing, but what the hell are those things?
Oh, no. That was an exaggeration.
Half the time I can't see them.
I know, yeah.
I'll tell you a funny story. I'll tell you a funny story about breakdown in communication. So I sent a response to one of my daughters, and I didn't have my glasses on, and I clicked on the facial expression, and the response was, "Why did you say that?" It's like,
Yeah.
because my glasses weren't on, so the face was a little bit different from a smile, right?
This is that's the emoticon for your wife. That's the emoticon for your girlfriend. That's the emoticon that was to go to your girlfriend, went to your wife. I mean, there's funny things like that, and that's why, right? We all get it. There's shortcuts. Yeah, and that's when the lawyer, exactly. And that's when you get the bill, right? And that's after everybody's been reconciled. So,
I mean, it becomes a
they're
fun
great.
thing.
I love it.
Nikki,
They're
did you-
shortcuts.
I do know that. I don't use those a lot, but I am like right in the middle. I feel like with using those and not, but like for our Facebook posts, we do use those sometimes. And we're a bakery, so it's a little bit
Right.
different. But even going back a little bit to the emails, I find that people not all the time notice it for the first time, but they notice it sometimes the second. But my, sorry, I don't know what that, I think it's, like, instead of best regards or the normal
Closing
thank you,
thing.
mine is smile on, Nikki, and then shop
Okay.
manager of Flavor Cupcakery, and so everybody's like, that's awesome, and then I could send a very disciplinary
part of who you
email, and then at the end of it, the
Sure.
smile
So-
on, no, have a great day.
So why does marketing matter? Marketing allows you to show why you're unique. Why me? Why should I? So again, that's all of what we've been talking about. Really and truly, that's all of this is that V plus E equals A. So how are you creating engagement, right? How are you showing that what you believe in, smile on, happiness, cupcakes, come on, right? All of that is part of this brand storytelling that you're doing. And if you
Sweet.
do it consistently, there's another best practice. Make sure, even if you're not doing it well, you do it consistently not well, you're at least better off than being inconsistent, because that just, what you,
They don't know who you are.
the thing you want to avoid at all costs in any of these situations we've talked about is noise or confusion. Again, if you confuse your customers or your employees or your spouse or worse, your girlfriend, you lose, right? You want to make sure that you are consistent in the way you communicate and that you are, as Miss Manners would say, putting your best foot forward or making a good first impression, every impression.
That leads us to salutations or the greetings. It used to be dear, right? I get a lot of, hey, Linda. Now, what do you think about that? Or, hi, Linda, or dear Linda. What do you think is the best way to do it? And again, I know the answer is it depends, right? It does depend, but we need to think about we need to think about who we're sending the message to, because I get a lot of haze. I get a lot of haze, and I hate to say it, but more millennials or people who are trying to sound more casual and youthful.
Right.
What's everybody's thoughts about
You're
using
still talking
hey?
email?
Right, not a written, I wouldn't do it in a written letter. I mean, certainly vocally you might say, hey, but Ally, what were you going to say about that?
98% of the time, I always use like either good morning or good afternoon, and then the person's name, so then it takes that whole question
Right,
out of
that's a good
the
point.
equation.
There's times where I might just put their name out.
Yeah, that's what I
Sure.
was gonna say, what do you?
John, but a way to marry that would be, John, good morning, hope you had a great weekend, right? So there's a familiarity, I respect and value you, and I want your attention. So I think,
As well.
I think there's I think that the informality of email still exists. It's, as you just said, it's not a written memo, it's not a letter to a lawyer, because even in a lawyer, to a lawyer, you wouldn't say dear, unless you've worked with him or her for a long time, and you might shortcut that.
You have to know your audience.
We're talking about
You
soft
really have
skills
to
here,
know
so there are
your-
no hard rules, but I think following your instinct in a lot of this, well, the hey, I do that. I mean, I'm guilty of
And it
it.
depends who it is,
Yeah,
too.
if you know them, why not?
I think you have to be careful when you
Right,
say
you gotta
follow
say
your
yo.
instinct, because some people don't have instinct.
Or the right instinct, or they don't have the right.
They don't, they find themselves more familiar, or they trying to be more youthful, that type of thing. I think there needs to be
Sure.
a stricter rule to that, because honestly, people, they don't intend to insult, because
Yeah,
they're just.
and that may be an HR issue too. I mean, honestly,
And it's hard, and it's the culture of the organization on how strict you are with that. Let's just talk about grammar, because it's because we're having so much interaction, and I know this goes till 10, but I know some of you may want to leave earlier. So let's talk about grammar. And I tend to be a grammar queen, and people don't like that, but I notice those things just because I happen to have been good in grammar. And when I make a mistake, boy, do I get upset, because that's part of my image.
I'm going to testify to the fact that she's a grammar.
I correct a lot. I know. I try not to correct in public.
I'm not going to finish the statement, but.
we need these people in our life, Larry, don't we?
So when
Behind
they,
the camera, but I couldn't resist.
so no, you're here too. So when this is to me the most common problem people have. What do we do with those pronouns like me and I and him and her, and me and my team are going to do this? Is that right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Give it to her and I.
I learned a long time ago in a very painful way not to correct people's grammar, and so like over
I
the
get
dinner
paid to do
table
that.
with your
I only do it when I'm
brand-new
paid to do it.
wife and in front of parents. So that's an instinct thing
Well,
too.
my children, it drove them crazy.
It does.
When
It
it's
does.
like, no,
My
no,
mother is
she
on
and
my
I.
children all the time
Right?
about that, me and him and all that.
Sometimes the roles, certain roles can do that, but it's just grammar. And to me, it was obvious. And just the typical rule is take the other pronoun out. You wouldn't say, me went to the store, right? I went to the store. Or give it to I. I wouldn't say that. I'd say give it to me. And we usually go after the other person. It's not me and. It's also not myself, and John will present. I hear this all the time from very educated people. It's only myself if you're doing it, and it's I did it myself.
There's
That's
a
the only
funny
time.
story. Wayne's, it wasn't
World?
Wayne's World. It was the other, Austin Powers. I always loved this one. Allow myself to present myself. He even gets awkward when he does it. So
Oh, I
that's a
need
good,
that.
That's
I
a
need
good
that
way to
video.
remember that. Yeah.
That works perfect.
Perfect.
Does it work?
Perfectly.
What's wrong? Perfectly.
Yeah.
I can get it to you real quick. I mean, this is how people are, we talk, right?
What school did these people go to?
Well, that's how we talk, and it's never been corrected. And like some people missed the day in school, like in third grade, when you learned adverbs.
Yeah.
And it's common. I know that. I get to see that sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Mistakes in her printed book.
Yeah.
But it just reflects. And please, 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 I have Grammarly on my computer.
Oh, yeah.
It's a free app.
Grammar what?
Grammarly, Grammarly. I'm not sure if it works with my Word, because Word has their own
It
spell
will,
check.
So you can actually integrate it into words, like when I write in Word, when I'm done, I run Grammarly
Okay.
just to check for it.
Because Word has their own, but when you put anything on social media, Grammarly is working, and it's telling you, no, you have to put an ly. No, you've left out the article. It's really important, especially because I do a lot of work with people who speak English as a second language. It's free. You're sending out your image. You don't want to put something on LinkedIn that shows that you're not grammatically correct.
Yeah, to save time, let me can I make this one point up here?
Absolutely.
So really what we're talking about is these are grammar rules, these are, Miss Manners type thing, where's the dark one? But there's a point, right? It's like I say to people all the time, 2 + 2 is 5, right? I mean, it could be, right? It doesn't really matter whether it's perfect or perfectly. It's 5. So grammar, I say punctuation literally kills.
It's going to be on here, so.
Do you want to play that for saving
Yeah.
time?
Should we just play it first?
No, I was going to say if we just save time.
Go ahead.
We can do it. It's up to you. You want to do it? Run your video?
Well, because it's visual. I'm a visual person.
All right.
But which one are you talking about?
This last one.
That was James.
I got
Okay.
it.
Yeah, that's the one that's in there. Okay. Steal my thunder. That's okay.
Right?
You're the
Ah,
guest.
that's your grandma, right.
Okay. So with that,
Let's eat, Grandma. Punctuation kills.
so let's see
Or
how
lack
much.
thereof.
Let's see how much. And let's take a look at this for a minute.
Hi, I'm Linda Katz-Wilner, founder and director of Successfully Speaking, and one of the co-founders of ESL Rules. Punctuation, pausing, and stress are key elements of
So it's in your
communication.
speaking as well as your writing.
Examples of punctuation are commas, periods or full stops, question marks, and exclamation points. Watch how the meaning of a sentence can completely change when altering these features. Bob said his son is crazy. Bob said his son is crazy.
So the whole subject changes.
Karen finds pleasure in cooking, her dog, and her cat. Karen finds pleasure in cooking her dog and her cat. Woman, without her, man is nothing. Woman without her man is nothing. Let's eat, Grandma.
There we go.
Let's eat, Grandma.
Okay.
For
So that just gives you an idea. And thank you, Larry Wilner, for all the graphics in that video. It's very convenient that I have a videographer in the house.
Doesn't speak well.
Doesn't speak well, but I can.
He doesn't speak
It's a lot of
good.
fodder for me. He doesn't speak good. Doesn't speak good. Okay,
But he doesn't speak good English.
that would be okay, right? So don't cut somebody off because they may finish the sentence and it ends up being very grammatical. Let's see here. With that, it was so fun. Is that correct? You hear this, and
It was so fun.
it was so fun.
It
You
was
hear-
so much fun.
And you know what? I think that's an East Coast, West Coast thing. Because I have people on the West Coast say, it's so fun. It's like so fun. You're very educated. Why? It's so much fun, isn't it? You'll hear broadcasters say it. And I think on the West Coast, it's so fun. And on the East Coast, it's so much fun. I think that was
So
interesting.
doesn't serve as an adjective there is the problem.
So you need
So
much.
is an adverb in that capacity. So much fun, because it, again, grammar thing, modifies much. So it intensifies how much fun. It was so much fun.
Right, but you can't say, but
But so fun, it was so
it's
what?
missing, right.
It was much
But-
fun to the end.
Exactly, and put an emoji.
So fun.
And put an
right?
emoji on there and you're good to go.
And this is a real quick one. Do you say I am, and I struggle with this because of my image, do you say I am good? I am well. I mean, I know what the answer is, and it also depends, but what's your thought about that?
Well, so I am good says that you're not a bad person, and I'm well says, how are you feeling?
Right, so well
There's
is
a
really
difference.
your health.
Right.
And good
I am,
could be
so
your attitude.
What's
I'm
missing
good,
is
I'm
feeling.
good.
I am feeling well, which again, adverb.
That's different too. How many people say, I feel so badly for her? It's like, that means if I feel badly, I
I'm
have
not good at
calluses
feeling
on my
bad.
fingers.
I'm not good at feeling.
Right, I have calluses on my fingers, so I
Right,
feel
I'm
badly.
feeling badly.
But I feel bad is, and people make those mistakes all the time.
I'm driving bad. Well, who's bad?
Right.
Why are you driving it?
Carol,
Graduate high school, isn't it graduate from high school? That's what I see all the time.
Graduated from.
Technically.
From, I see I graduated high school.
You're right.
Yeah.
And some of this also becomes different languages, because in other countries, they go to university. They don't go to the university. Or they go to University of Maryland, but many people say, that's when I went to university. In other countries, they say it that way. So you have to know what your background is as well.
Australia going walkabout.
I just love regional
Not
terms.
going
We can,
for a walkabout.
right, we could talk hours about regional terms. I'm not from the Maryland area, so there are a lot of terms that I've used that aren't even used down here.
I'm not from the Maryland area, hun.
Excuse me, that's why.
Or dull.
But forget about it, I'm from New York.
Your boss and you say, we have a problem here. Do you have a mouse in your pocket? No, I have a
A
problem.
we. Isn't that
That's the
offensive?
way.
Even go into a store, what are we looking for today? Well, we're not looking, I'm looking. And again, that sets the tone for the relationship.
It
Like,
does.
it's like, it turns me off when
It's a
somebody
turn-off.
says that.
Because if she or he had said to you, how can I help you find what you're looking for?
It's about me, right, exactly.
That's the hero.
The words, so let's just, because I wanted to finish up with some of these things. I love these lists, so if we just take a look at it, avoid alliteration always. And if somebody wants this, I could send it to them. Prepositions are not words to end sentences with. And that rule changes a little bit, doesn't it, over time, I think. We're more flexible. Avoid cliches like the plague, they're old hat. Comparisons are as bad as cliches. Be more or less specific. Writers should never generalize. Don't be redundant. Don't use more words than it's necessary. It's highly superfluous. Who needs rhetorical questions? Exaggeration is 1 billion times worse than an understatement. And number 10, be consistent. So there are so many different rules that we can have problems with. We can't always be perfect or perfectly or perfect or whatever it might be, but these are all the different things to think about. I didn't get to all the questions, I know, and I know we'll be around till 10 o'clock. I know there was a question of the difference between quality writing and effective writing, and that goes into a whole deeper level of not just the emails, but what to do, whether it's a brief, whether it's a blog, and
Well,
some
we
of those
didn't
things.
even get into any
We
of
didn't
that.
get into
We were
any
talking
of
about
that.
emails mostly, but I think a lot of us these days find ourselves in that kind of even de facto marketing. We're writing on social media, whether we're posting on Facebook or Instagram or actually blogging. Effective communication skills really play into that. And back to what you were saying, quality versus effective too. Sure. How do you know how many words in a blog versus a post on Facebook?
So we're constantly challenged. We do have so many tools out there now that we can use to help us with the writing, like I mentioned, or just look at it again before you send it out. So many of us are guilty of that, or we've learned our lesson because of something we've sent out and was misinterpreted. And text, we didn't even talk about text.
No.
That just takes it down another notch. But yet, more people are communicating with text than they are with email. I tried to get in touch with Sarah yesterday. I knew I'd be much more successful texting her than if she'd get a chance to get to her email because apparently you were in a meeting. And so email, and I know with my kids, if I send an email, they don't see it right away. When I get text, they still see it, but they don't respond right away, but that's another whole story.
Story regarding text. I text my boss when I'm not coming in. If I were to call her, my story would be entirely too long, and
Some
I'm
people
trying to
appreciate it.
convince myself that I'm sick enough to call in, my words would give me away.
But
It's using,
It's choices.
It's using the tools.
It's choices. It's choices. If you're interested in any of the other videos, because I've done at least 5 video series, I do have a YouTube channel that's separate from my other YouTube channel, and it's just Linda Katz Wilner. And all of Henry's video will be up there soon, and right now there are 3 other videos from different people on different topics. Everything from using life as your coach to culture in the workplace and body language from somebody who has a PhD in the field of body language and social psychology. For upcoming events, I want to mention that next month we're going to have the hard facts about soft skills will be about networking. And this will be a little different from today in that there are going to be 3 people on the panel. Jim Reese from Offit Kerman, many of you may know him. Eric Benzer from Benzer Insurance, who's sitting right here. And Sarah Ryan from CQ Credit Union. And they'll all be here talking and having conversations about networking because we can always learn more about these.
One final
'Cause I had
thought
a question
before we jump into questions. Well, what's
Oh, because the question I had, so what are, you could see, Henry and I can talk for hours about this, and hopefully it was all interesting to all of you and made you think more about these things. But what I want to ask you, Henry, again, is what are some of the hard facts about soft skills? I asked you this once before, and you had a great answer. I don't know if you
I
remember
wish
it.
I remember what it was. I guess the hard fact is that this is hard.
That was the answer.
Soft skills are generated, you've learned them over the years culturally in your family, at a workplace, you've seen other people do it and so you do it. That's the thing, they're not easy. The hard facts, as we were talking about, resume things, you can get those. The soft skills are learned behaviors, they are following your instinct, they're soft, called soft for a reason.
But they're soft, but I think over the years, soft meant they're not as important. And I think
they're critically important.
85% of the decisions are made because of the soft
Lack
skills.
of soft skills kill. Right?
Right? You know the people who don't have those soft skills, right? They're brilliant. And they're so successful in the technical tasks they're doing in their job. But they may not have, not all, but they may not have those soft skills.
They're training doctors now for that.
Right.
They're training
They are.
doctors
I
to
work
learn
with
a
a
lot
lot
of
of
these
doctors.
skills.
I work with doctors. I'm working with a Chinese doctor right now who said, I just don't make eye contact. It's just not comfortable because in a Chinese culture, it's not. But if you're going to work in the United States, you have to work really hard at looking at the person in the eye. And they are learning that now, and it's part of their competencies now.
So let me, just before we jump into questions, I'll leave you with this. This is the secret to success for effective communications. If you walk away from this not remembering anything else, before you push send or post or whatever, read it one more time and think, how would I react if I received this? Right? So what's in it for me? Put yourself in your customers or your recipients' shoes for 1 second. And it's hard when you drink the Kool-Aid and breathe the air, so all the jargon, we didn't even get into that, all of the terms that you might be normally sharing in your marketing, take 1 second to think, what would I say if I got this? And I think you'll get one step closer to being more effective in your communication skills.
Proper punctuation, not be lazy.
Grammarly, right?
Yeah.
Are there any questions? Any other questions we haven't covered? Any special takeaways besides I'm going to use more punctuation? Anything that stood out to anybody?
I have my audience many times is youth. And to get their attention, I tell a story, but it's usually about me. I don't always keep them engaged. They are a tough audience. An educator told me, use name tags and call them by name. Don't know.
So what I would suggest in that capacity, I like the fact that you're telling a personal story because, again, the emotional side to this is back to that MRI study, the personal connection, that if I can make a personal connection with you, you're going to be more engaged. So if you are going to tell a personal story, make sure that there's something about it that's relatable or related to them. So again, you realize they're asking, what's in it for me? Why am I hearing this, Agnes? So almost like if you have a moral to the story, right? That goes back to storytelling techniques, the beginning, the middle, and the end. We want to know what happens to the hero at the end. But why do I care about it? So if you're going to share a personal story, as I did at the beginning, how can I relate it to the audience so that you'll go, oh, well, now I see how that affects me or how I might have responded to such a situation. We have something in common, let's have a longer conversation.
And think of the acronym BLUF, the bottom line up front. Sometimes you need to give something right in the beginning to grab their attention.
Yeah.
So it could be that, yes, you want it to be a story, but if your story is long, maybe start it with a question, right? Start it with a fact, and this is more with the public speaking, that grabs the person's attention right away, like, oh, if I talked about cupcakes or all of a sudden Nikki has me, right? So know your audience and find what you can do that's going to grab their attention.
So
they
the
do
V
wanna
plus
listen.
E equals A. What's A? What's the action that you want to get out of that audience by sharing the V and the E together?
And know that.
And know that.
If you don't know it, that's why
And
you flounder.
another very effective communications storytelling tool, at least at the high-level marketing perspective, is start with the problem, right? Identify to your audience so that they say, yeah, that's me. I want to know more. Rather than saying, we're the greatest company ever built and we've done everything, say, commonly people who come to us have this problem in their life. We have a solution for you. I mean, think about that the next time you see commercials. How are they structuring it that way? Because that just draws you in. Like with ServPro, like nobody wants, to admit that they have a leaky basement or whatever the case may be. But your storytelling would show that that's the problem that you might have, and we can make your life better.